Johannesburg on that date or around that date. What you are denying is that you had asked Travel Excellence to make that booking, or that you had asked anybody to ask Travel Excellence to make that booking. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Thank you. So that's 8 June 2014, Mr. Singh. Then the other aspect of the paragraph, which is the last, that is in relation to the payment. Ms. Suleiman says, I cannot recall whether I spoke to Mr. Essa or Mr. Singh, but one of the two gentlemen phoned me to tell me a driver would be dropping off money in cash to settle the invoice, which indeed took place. I attach here to the cash receipt dated 16 July 2014, and that is attached as SS3. Subsequently deposited the money into our bank account on the same date. So let's go to SS3 on page 1565.14. And what we see there is a document, she calls it a cash receipt, dated 16 July 2014. Your name appears there, Mr. Anoj Singh, and the amount is written out in words, 9,100 Rand, invoice number, the number is given, 85, capital A, 587236, and the amount in numerics, 9,100 Rand, cash paid to Samira. Your comment on the allegations in this regard, Mr. Singh?
Mr. Chair, I have no recollection of this invoice. I deny that this invoice was made out to me. There would be no reason for me to pay for this invoice, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, if you look at sorry, not the invoice, the receipt. Mr. Chair, even if you look at these receipts and they're pervasive throughout, they're relatively rudimentary receipts. I could have got a receipt book and written this invoice myself. I mean, this receipt.
Okay, just repeat the point you make about the receipt. I think you're trying to speak up a bit.
I said, Mr. Chair, I denied that this receipt was made out in my name. I did not receive this receipt.
Yes.
It does not bear any signature of mine or the purported driver or anyone from who this cash was purportedly received from.
Yes.
Secondly, Mr. Chair, if I denied the fact that I requested this booking to be made in the first place, there is no reason for this receipt to be made out in my name.
Yeah, no, I understand that. As I understand her evidence in her affidavit, she does say that there were times when you would arrange with her that you would send a driver to give her cash to settle some of the invoices. Now, you have said that you know her. You have said that you know Travel Excellence. You have said that you did make bookings. You did ask them to make bookings for you. I will add at times, because it may be that you also asked other agents at other times. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yes. Now, in regard to those occasions when you had requested her to make bookings for you, would you receive invoices from her? Would she send you invoices, and would you receive them?
Mr. Chair, I think occasionally I would receive them via WhatsApp, if I recall correctly, but I don't recall, Mr. Chair.
Yes, okay. But at some stage or another, you would know what you owed them.
Mr. Chair, yes.
Yes. And how did you pay them? Did your method of paying them ever include sending a driver to pay them in cash?
Mr. Chair, I certainly paid through Voyager miles sometimes. There were credit card payments that I had made.
Yeah.
There was cash payments that I made, but I don't recall my driver going to settle any of these.
Is your recollection that all payments you made that included cash payment? If there were, or let me ask, were there some payments you made in cash?
Mr. Chair, I think I recall some of them, but I don't recall which ones exactly.
Oh, okay. And would you have any recollection as to whether it was something quite usual for you to do, namely to pay in cash, even though sometimes you paid by other means?
I would think, Mr. Chair, it was not unusual.
It was not unusual. Okay. Okay, all right. So she says here a driver was was sent to drop the cash. So you are saying, although you accept that sometimes you did pay her in cash, but you say you never sent a driver, or are you saying you are not sure whether you might at some stage or another sent a driver with cash?
Mr. Chair, on this particular invoice, I am saying there was no need for me to pay this because I didn't request it.
No, I accept accept that that's what you say in regard to this invoice. Yes. I'm talking about those that you acknowledge would have been your invoices because you would have requested her to make payments, to make bookings for you.
Okay, sir. So the question
in regard to those bookings which you had requested her to make for you.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
When you had to pay, are you saying that there was never an occasion when you would have sent your driver to pay in cash, or are you saying you are not sure whether at some or other stage you may have sent a driver to pay her in cash, or you say whenever I pay, you paid her yourself, even if it was cash?
Mr. Chair, I'm from a driver perspective, I'm probably referring to our previous conversation in terms of the Transnet driver. But I think in this case, Mr. Chair, I think if you're asking the question, did a third party sometimes pay, whether it be a driver or relative or...
At your instance?
At my instance, yes.
Yes. Is the answer yes?
Yes.
But whether it was a driver or not, you are not sure?
I'm not sure.
Do you recall who else you might have asked to go and pay for you in cash if it was not your driver?
As I said, Mr. Chair, it might have been a family, a relative, or it may have been acquaintances.
Or it wouldn't be somebody from work?
No.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Mr. Selega.
Thank you. Mr. Singh, when you refer to your driver, is this a personal driver?
Sorry, sir?
When you refer to your driver, are you referring to a personal driver?
No, I was clarifying the chairperson's question, or the response that I gave to the chairperson, in terms of saying, no, it was not my driver.
Yes.
I was referring to the allocated driver from Transnet.
Oh, it's an allocated driver from Transnet. Chairperson, I believe the file is here. And I think I should complete every section also by reference to it. That's Transnet, Bundle 5, Bracket B. We have a copy for Mr. Singh.
Okay.
Chairperson, is there copies? Is there copies for us too? Because we didn't know that this is going to be dealt with today.
Is there a copy for Mr. Singh's counsel?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Page
I guess you will need to have both files to compare.
Yes, Chair. Yes, Chair.
Okay. What page in the bundle?
Page 426. .426 is a page in the 10.6 directive. Four two six. 426. I think it has that flag, the orange flag. So if
Well,
paragraph
just
one-
repeat, Mr. Selega, whose affidavit are we looking at now at Transnet Bundle 5 at page 426?
Yes. Chairperson, we're going to look at two documents.
Yeah.
The one is the 10.6, Regulation 10.6 Directive issued to Mr. Singh, requesting him to provide information to the Commission on certain aspects. The page reference I have now given is a page in that 10.6 Directive, that's page 426.
Okay. All right.
We will then also refer to the affidavit of Mr. Singh responding to their request in terms of the directive.
Okay.
So the page I've referred to is 426, paragraph 113. He's been asked to provide information relating to local and international trips that appear to have coincided with trips by members of the Gupta family and their associates, inter alia. For present purposes, Chairperson, 1.13.3. The return trip to Dubai between 3 June 2014 and 8 June 2014. And that's the reason why.
I'm sorry. I thought you said 1.13.3.
No, 1.13.2.
Oh, okay. A return trip to Dubai between 3 June 2014 and 8 June 2014. Yes.
Yes. That we're referring to 8 June 2014 because of it coincides with the date in Ms. Suleiman's affidavit,
Yes.
the first trip of 4 June 2014. You shared a return flight with Mr. Rajesh Kumar Gupta on flight EK 763. The following individuals were in Dubai during the same period: Mr. Sanjay Gruver, Mr. Paul John O'Flaherty, Mr. Iqbal Shamar, Mr. Selvin Kristen, Mr. Zu Whitley, Mr. Viga Sager, Mr. Rajesh Kumar Gupta, Mr. Pin Edwin Sodi, and Mr. Kamal Vas Ram. Now the response.
So the allegation, he was asked to deal with an allegation that he had a trip, he had a return trip to Dubai and back between 3 June 2014 and 8 June 2014, and that he shared that flight with Mr. Rajesh Kumar Gupta, and the flight number is given, and that during that same period when he was in Dubai, a number of people mentioned there were also in Dubai. That's what the allegation is. Okay.
Mr. Singh responds to that on page 480. 480. 480. That is
In the same bundle.
in the same bundle. That's Mr. Singh's affidavit of the 2nd of February 2021. 480. The same bundle.
I don't have.
Somebody must just assist Mr. Singh to find the page. It's your affidavit where it says add paragraph 1.13.2 at the top.
I have until 476.
Or you don't have all the pages?
Yes.
Okay.
I think Mr. Singh's file has been regularized.
Have you found the right page, Mr. Singh?
Yes, Mr.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Mr. Singh then responds, at paragraph 1.13.2, return trip to Dubai, and he gives the dates in brackets. 47 says, I deny I traveled on a return trip to Dubai as alleged in this paragraph. And then 48, he says, regarding the aforesaid dates, I wish to state that 48.1, I left South Africa on 3 June 2014. I only entered Dubai on 6 June 2014. I exited Dubai on 8 June 2014. And then he says further, between 4 June 2014 and 6 June 2014, I traveled between Frankfurt and Heathrow airports. But relevant for present purposes here is 48.3, which is I exited
Yes.
Dubai
Yes.
on 8 June 2014.
Yeah. I think for the sake of completeness, Mr. Singh, can we take it that when you exited Dubai on 8 June 2014, you returned to Johannesburg?
That is correct.
Okay, all right. Okay, Mr. Saleh.
So then, Mr. Singh, it's either a coincidence or divination on the part of the travel agent that they arrange your trip from Dubai to Johannesburg on this same date, 8 June 2014.
Sorry, so I got the first part. I didn't hear your second part.
Oh,
Just repeat what we are putting to him.
yes. So I'm saying, and you will comment, is either a coincidence or divination on their part that they arranged your return trip from Dubai to Johannesburg on the same date, 8 June 2014. Your comment?
Sorry, so the meaning of your word in your second.
Or definition.
Ja, Leonard friend is laughing. Maybe she can explain what divination means.
No, explain yourself, Mr. Don't shift the responsibility.
Divination, that means, Mr. Singh, they would have known by some supernatural powers that you were traveling and traveling from Dubai, not from Cape Town, to Johannesburg on this very date of 8 June 2014?
Well, Mr. Chair, I think for the purposes of this discussion, what is important is also paragraph 48.4 of the said affidavit on page 480, is that between 4 and 8, I traveled between Frankfurt and Heathrow. 49 says, to the best of my recollection, the aforesaid travel relates to business travel.
I'm sorry, just repeat that last sentence.
Okay, so 48.4
Yeah,
basically says that I was traveling in June between the dates of 4 and 6 between Frankfurt and Heathrow.
yes.
So 49 basically then says, to the best of my recollection, the aforesaid travel is related to business travel.
Yeah,
So, as I originally said, Mr. Chair, the issue is that I was actually traveling on business. There was no need for me to have this. I would have not
Yes.
requested.
yes, but
So
Mr. Selega's point is this. If you didn't ask Travel Excellence, if you didn't tell them you were going to be traveling from Dubai to Johannesburg on the 8th of June 2014, and if you never asked anybody to tell them or to make a booking for you to travel from Dubai to Johannesburg on the 8th of June 2014, how would they have known your, how would they have known that you were going to be traveling from Dubai to Johannesburg on that date? How could they get it so right?
Well, Mr. Chair, I am not too sure. Maybe it's a coincidence or the word that he used second. Because
You
Mr.
think
Chair,
they have supernatural powers to know this?
maybe, as you will see throughout the affidavit, Mr. Chair, some supernatural powers was at play. But on her own version, Mr. Chair, at her affidavit, she actually says, I cannot recall who made the request.
Yes.
This is Ms. Suleiman Hussein.
Yes, yeah, but she is saying between you and Mr. Essa, she is not sure who made the request, but it's one of you.
Well,
As
Mr.
I
Chair,
understand what she's saying.
then she must state that, Mr. Chair, because that's not the way I interpret. This is not the way I interpret this.
Let's see, is that a 221? Eh? I cannot recall whether I spoke to Mr. Essa or Mr. Singh. Is that where you? Oh, I cannot recall who made the request. Oh, okay, no, I had in mind the later part of the affidavit. Yeah, but my understanding, based on her affidavit, is that when she says she can't recall, even where she doesn't mention whether it was you or Mr. Essa, my understanding is that she's talking about you and Mr. Essa, because throughout her affidavit, the only persons who used to make a request for your traveling were either you or Mr. Essa. So in that context, I understand her to be, when she says, I cannot recall, I'm understand her to be saying that, but it may be that you are right. We shouldn't be thinking about any of those two, maybe somebody else. But she, as far as I recall, she never anywhere else, never says in her affidavit somebody else other than either yourself or Mr. Essa would request her.
Well, Mr. Chair, it goes back to Ms. Suleiman's recollection of events that took place 6 years ago, or 7 years ago. Because if you then take paragraph 22.2, and I know I'm jumping ahead,
Yeah.
it's lekker, but apologies for that. If you look there, she says a booking was requested by Mr. Singh's partner. Ms.
Okay,
Knight.
yes, yeah, so sometimes it would be somebody else.
But the point is,
Yeah,
that request was never made by Mr.
okay, no, that.
And that comes back to the point of the recollection of events
Yeah.
by Ms. Suleiman.
Yes, but let's complete our understanding about what your response is in regard to the booking relating to the 8th of June 2014. Am I right to say, in the end, you're saying, well, it must be a coincidence that she got that right, or as you say, maybe she had some supernatural powers because, indeed, you did travel from Dubai to Johannesburg on the date that she did.
Well, Mr. Chair, based on the information that I had, it would seem like it's a coincidence because I'm not able to say whether, I don't think I can categorically state that Mr. Essa did not request travel.
Just repeat that sentence.
I said I can categorically state that Mr. Essa would have not requested travel.
On your behalf?
On my behalf.
Yeah, okay.
Chairperson, sorry, maybe it's important, Mr. Singh alluded to it earlier. That ticket was voided. It seems not to have been used. And I think it's an important factor to take into account too.
Yes, no. That might be so. At this stage, he was dealing with my question as well as Mr. Selega's question of how come these travel agents had this information correct if Mr. Singh wasn't the one who told them about his traveling, or somebody that Mr. Singh had asked to tell them. That was what we are dealing with. Mr. Selega?
Thank you, Chair. To that point raised, we should equally look at the receipt of the 9,100 cash payment together with that ticket. So, Chair, paragraph 21 of Ms. Suleiman's affidavit. It may well also be something you had in mind. It says so they get introduced, Mr. Anoj Singh, they say, gets introduced to them. And paragraph 21 says, from there onwards, we had received requests from either Mr. Essa or from Mr. Singh directly to book flights for them. So, I mean, it still carries the idea you had. It's either from Mr. Singh or from Mr. Essa. There's only that one incident where they say is Mr. Singh's partner who did the request. But generally, it seems to be the theme. So, Mr. Singh, paragraph 49 of your affidavit that you submitted.
Before you go there, Mr. Sleka, can I ask this question to Mr. Singh with reference to paragraph 20 of Ms. Suleiman's affidavit. She says, Mr. Essa introduced you, Mr. Singh, to her during 2014. She says prior to that she had never met you. Now, do you recall whether, in terms of your own dealings with her, you had met her at any time before 2014?
No, Mr.
No. So, do you know whether, is your recollection that it may have been in 2014 that the two of you met, or would it have been after, on your recollection? You meeting her, let's leave out Mr. Salme Essa for now, just in terms of your own dealings with her.
In terms of, Mr. Chair, I don't recall this meeting of 2014, certainly by Mr. Essa, as I've said. So your question is?
So my question is, because you have said that you had your own interactions with her.
Yes.
Because you did ask her to make bookings for you, and you did settle your invoices. So I'm asking, in terms of your own recollection, are you able to say whether you met her for the first time or started dealing with her for the first time in 2014 or after 2014? Because you have said that it wasn't before 2014.
Mr. Chair, I think the term dealing with her is probably more appropriate. Mm-hmm. I think it would have been probably in and around this time, but certainly not 2012 2012 or 2010, as you would say.
It would, you think it may have been 2014 sometime?
Sometime.
Okay, no, that's fine. Now, the question that arises, because I think you were quite emphatic, and you must tell me if I misunderstood you, you were quite emphatic that you were not introduced by Mr. Essa to her. Is that right?
That is correct.
Yeah. Your dealings with her from the time you started up to now, the relationship has, the business relationship between you and her has been fine. There have been no issues.
No, sir.
Do you know why she would say you were introduced to her by Mr. Salim Essa if actually that was not, it's not what happened?
Mr. Chair, I would be speculating.
You wouldn't know. Okay, all right. Mr. Selega?
Thank you, Chair. I was going to ask you, Mr. Singh, about your paragraph 49 in the affidavit. I see
And
there.
it is now Mr. Singh's affidavit in Transnet Bundle 5,
Correct, Chair.
page 480.
480 years.
Yes.
5
Continue.
bracket B.
Yes, continue.
Where you say, to the best of my recollection, the aforesaid travels related to Transnet business. I am intrigued by the phrase, to the best of my recollection, which seems to suggest that you are not certain about what you are saying.
Well, Mr. Chair, I think when we crafted this wording, we had access to the official travel records from Transnet, which we had requested from the Commission, which indicated to us that this trip basically was a business trip.
Is your answer therefore yes to Mr. Selega's question, or is it no? He's asking you whether the reason why you said to the best of your recollection is the reason why you said that you were uncertain whether the trips were were Transnet business.
No, sir.
You were not. You were certain.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Selega.
Yes. So is there a reason why, sorry, are you saying you relied on documents from Transnet provided to you by the Commission?
Yes.
Is there a reason why you use the word to the best of your recollection as opposed to these documents show that I traveled on a Transnet business trip?
Well, not really.
In other words, what Mr. Selega is saying is he would have expected you, if you were relying on the documents you were talking about, he would have expected you to say, according to these documents, and you mentioned them, you were on a Transnet business trip.
Okay, Mr. Chair, maybe a better choice of words would have been appropriate.
Just repeat that, please.
I said, in that case, maybe a better choice of words would have been appropriate.
Okay. Mr.
Yes.
Selega.
Thank you, Chair.
In other words, the point is, when you say to the best of your recollection, it doesn't give the impression that you are basing it on documents.
I take that point.
It's like you are basing it on your memory.
Memory.
Okay.
Yes, no, that's correct. Because if the documents, but I'll find out, if the Commission gave you the documents that show what you're saying, the question is also, why would they ask you this question? That you should explain the trips to Dubai between 3 June 2014 to 8 June 2014.
Chairperson, I assume Mr. Seleka is now speculating as to reasons why things were done.
I think,
The issue was about in fact, without going into detail, my learned
Yeah.
friend must look at the 10.6 and then he will
no.
understand.
I think Mr. Singh can deal with the question. Mr. Singh, what do you want to say in response to what Mr. Lega says? Or do you have no
Sorry, the
comments?
question again.
He is saying it's strange, it would be strange that they ask you to explain your trip from Dubai or to Dubai in circumstances where the documents that they showed you reflected that it was a Transnet business trip. That's what he's saying. Do you want to comment on that?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it is quite simple. It says, if you look 48.1, it says, I left South Africa on 03, I entered Dubai on 06, I exited on 08, between 04 and 06, I traveled between Frankfurt and Heathrow Airport. So from wherever the information was sourced, I don't know where they got the information from, indicated that I had traveled to Dubai between these dates. And I guess that's why they've asked.
Just hang on 1 second, Mr. Singh. Are you able to hear him well?
I was going to say, we can't hear it all. He needs to
I think
move
it's
nearer
because-
to the
it's because of this-
microphone.
Yeah, you see, Mr. Singh, there are two people you want to make sure they hear you in this room. It's me and your counsel.
Okay, so let me rearrange my
If
desk.
Mr. Slega doesn't hear you, you can deal with that.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
I must hear you and your counsel, because your counsel needs to protect you. And I need to make a finding about what you are saying.
Okay, Mr. Chair, is this better?
Yeah, I think that's better, yeah. But after some time, you might find that you're,
No, it's because of these files. Mr.
yeah,
Chair.
okay, all right.
So maybe I should put one on this side.
Yeah, just see how you, I'm sorry, the space is very limited, but just do your best.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he needs both. You see, the councillors who use this room, wouldn't need to use such big files. So that's why the space is limited.
I think this will be better for everybody.
Okay, all right, yeah. Okay, you remember the proposition?
Oh, yes, I was, Mr. Seleka wanted to know why the commission asked me.
Why it would have asked you to explain this trip if from the documents that they showed you, it was clear that it was a Transnet business trip.
Well, Mr. Chair, it was not, they did not show me the documents.
Oh, okay.
So they put this to us in a 10-6 notice, was it?
Yes.
In a 10-6 notice.
Yes.
Given the fact that they had put it to us, we then requested information
Yes,
to
okay.
understand whether these trips were either personal or private, or business or private travel.
Yeah, but you requested the documents from the commission?
That's correct.
Okay, so they did have the documents at some stage. Did they
I'm-
provide them to you?
Well, Mr. Chair, I think we got the 10-6.
Yeah,
We then requested the information. Whether they had it or whether they accessed it from Transnet after our request,
Yeah.
I'm not too sure.
but they ultimately gave it to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. So is the point you are making that at the time they asked you to explain, they might not have had those documents? They might have got those documents after you made the request?
Well, I don't know, Mr. Chair, but it would
Yes.
seem so.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Well, Mr. Chair, if you look, I can take it further, for example. If you look at the trip, just go to paragraph 54 on page 481.
Is that of your affidavit?
Of my affidavit, yes. You see, they asked me to explain a return trip to Hong Kong on 30 June to 03 July. Now, again, in that, if you look at that, again, it's a business trip to basically the commission had thought that I had a return trip to Hong Kong. But it was actually not a return trip to Hong Kong. It was a business trip to China that was via Hong Kong. So the
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Yeah, no, I think in effect you're saying you don't know, but what you do know, you don't know when they had the documents in their possession, that is the commission. What you do know is that they sent you a 10-6 directive, and in that 10-6 directive, you were asked to explain this trip. You requested information, they provided you with information.
Yes.
You don't know at what stage they were in possession of the information.
Or the motive behind asking these questions in the 10-6, I'm also not aware of that.
Chairperson, sorry, I need to again just raise my concern in the
Yeah.
context. You have to look with the greatest of respect at paragraph 1.30. When these questions about the trips are asked, they're asked against the following questions. It starts off, the frequency and reasons for visitors to the Saxon. Then it goes, information relating to local and international trips that appear to have coincided with trips by members of the Gupta family and their associates, inter alia. So it's against that background that there's then questions asked about the trips. So the proposition put forward by Mr. Seleko is they knew about these trips and they must have known that it was official work trips. Why would they ask you? Is not a valid point. It's asked in a specific context.
But you can re-examine on it when you re-examine. Okay, Mr. Seleko, let's continue.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Singh, then let's go back to Ms. Suleiman's affidavit, paragraph 22.2. The booking was requested by Mr. Singh's partner, where we are, yeah, by Mr. Singh's partner, Ms. Selina Naik. Is that pronounced correctly?
We'll accept it for now. It's Nike.
Oh, Naik. Is that your partner? Is that your partner?
She's my current wife.
Is that your current one? Coincidence or divination?
Neither.
What is that now, Mr. Singh?
Chair,
You and Mr. Singh, you getting to talk about things that we are not. But
that sentence, Chair, I was simply confirming with Mr. Singh that Ms. Selina Naik is the partner. He confirms his current wife.
yeah,
So I was asking whether is it a coincidence or divination?
that they knew about that.
Yes,
Oh, okay. And what was the answer, Mr. Singh?
he says.
Either of the above.
Yeah. Ms. Solomon knew that Ms. Nike was my partner.
Because you dealt with
Yes.
her. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay. But I didn't hear you give that answer when the two of you were talking.
No, well, I thought he was asking the question in tongue in cheek.
Oh, okay. Maybe he was.
I was. I did.
Okay. All
So-
right, let's continue.
So, Ms. Selina Naik phoned Mr. Singh and her fly from Johannesburg on 6 August 2014 to Dubai and back to Johannesburg on 12 August 2014. Mr. Singh and his partner were issued with ticket number, and their numbers are given, 2 numbers, respectively, CSS5. The total cost was 60,000 Rand, which was charged to Mr. S's account. And CSS6, Mr. Essa settled this via EFT to my NetBank account, CSS 6.1. I subsequently transferred this from my NetBank account to the account of Travel Excellence. I also attach here to the receipt issued on 6 August 2014. Mr. Singh,
I guess the first question is whether you and your partner undertook that trip to that destination and back. Mr. Singh.
Yes. Sorry, Mr. Chair, I was just
Yeah,
getting
okay.
maybe in. So I'm going to keep this file here, but I'm going to try and get close to it.
Okay,
It's
no,
just-
that's fine.
it's
Just
just more
do what will make you comfortable, Mr. Singh.
Mr. Chair, the first point to be made is that Ms. Suleiman is mistaken in a recollection. So, Ms. Naik did not request this 6th of August 2014,
This booking,
this booking.
yes,
Ms. Naik, in fact, requested a booking in August 2015,
August 2015,
2015,
not 2014.
not 20,
Okay,
which also was cancelled and not used.
was not pursued.
Was, yes.
Yeah.
It was booked, it was cancelled, but it was cancelled. So
Yeah.
we never used it.
Okay.
So, Ms. Suleiman's recollection in terms of who requested this flight is incorrect.
Okay,
On the 6th of August 2014, however, we did fly to Dubai. And I requested that flight. So from that perspective, that is the state of the paragraph 22.2.
so is your response that one, Ms. Suleiman is mistaken in saying it was your partner who requested that she make that booking, but that the position is that you asked her to make the booking. That's 2 and 3. You and your partner did travel, fly from Johannesburg on 6 August 2014 to Dubai and back to Johannesburg on 12 August 2014. That part you say is correct.
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay, all right. And with regard to the ticket numbers, you don't dispute those, even though maybe you might not recall whether those are the correct numbers.
I was just going to say, Mr. Chair, if I recall those ticket numbers,
Sorry?
if I recall these ticket numbers, I'd be really,
You'll be a genius.
no, I'd be that second word that you used.
Okay, so, but the trip did happen, and it was booked through or by Travel Excellence. It was requested, the booking was requested by you. And then, did it cost 60,000 rand?
Mr. Chair, if you look at the invoice that Ms. Suleiman attaches to the affidavit, again,
Yeah.
I don't recall this invoice offhand.
That
But-
is double S6.
Yes, double S6. But it seems like the number is in the ballpark of what I recall.
Yeah,
Okay, in terms of the ticket prices
Yes.
and so on.
Yeah.
But what is anomalous, Mr. Chair, is if you look at the invoice itself, okay, no, double S6 on page 1565.17.
okay, I'm there, yes.
So if you look at it, Mr. Chair, you look at airfare and you look at airfare for Mr. Singh and Ms. Naik, the first two lines.
Yeah,
You see it actually is 20,000 and 20,000. Then you have airport taxes, 10,000 and 10,000, coming to a balance of 60,000.
yes,
Okay? Now, when you compare that to the Serendipity Tours invoice, which is on page 1565.16,
Yeah.
the page before that, you will see, Mr. Chair, that there is a discrepancy in the airport tax.
in respect of the airport tax.
Yes, if you look
Yeah,
on the Travel Excellence invoice, it's airport taxes of 10,000, 10,000 straight. Okay? If you look at the invoice from Serendipity, the taxes are 6,000. So basically, if you look at the line airport taxes, and airport taxes subject to VAT. So you basically 6,6267 plus 322.81. Are you there, Mr.?
I'm looking, but I think,
Okay,
I'm
so if you look-
thinking in the meantime whether we should go into the details because
Yeah.
you say the booking was requested by you.
But Mr.
and
Chair,
you're traveling,
the
yeah.
point that one
Yes.
has to take.
Yes,
So the point I'm making, Mr.
yeah,
is that there's a discrepancy
Yes.
between, let's call it
60,000 rand.
60,000 rand and a source document from
Yes.
Serendipity.
Yes.
Now, the reason why I make that point, Mr. Chair, is this 60,000 is tied back to a EFT or a bank settlement from somebody. Let's not say Mr. S or whoever. Let's
Yeah.
just say somebody.
Yes.
Okay? Now, and again, when we go through each of the invoices, you'll see the same pattern. Is that it's linked to some bank statement with some value. And then you have an invoice that's generated that equals that. But it's not supported by the actual, let's call it, for
Yes.
want of a better word,
Yeah.
external invoice. If this
The one
invoice
that goes
in
out.
itself can be relied upon. Because if you look at the date on which the serendipity invoices are generated, they're generated on the 13th of November 2018.
I'm sorry, where do you see that?
So if you
date?
look, 1565.16,
Yes.
if you go right at the bottom, Mr. Chair, on the bottom left-hand corner, you see there, Mr. Chair, there's a date,
13 November 2018.
and I think there's a time
Yeah.
as well. Now,
You regard that date as a date for what?
that's what I'm saying. I don't know what the date is. Because if this travel happened in 2014, I would expect this invoice to be dated 2014, not 2018. And if it was a duplicate invoice,
Which invoice, Mr. Singh?
The one,
serendipity
1565.16.
1565.16.
But the date is there in that block.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is if you look at the bottom,
31 July 2014.
yes, but if you look at the bottom,
Yes.
at the bottom left-hand corner, you see a date of 13/11/2018.
But I think, Mr. Singh, until we know what they say or she says this date represents, it's difficult to say much about it because there is nothing indicating what it is for. Whereas if you look at the top, you can understand that that is document number, that's date, and that's account number and so on. But here at the bottom, there's just a date and a time, and I don't know whether the words SUP or what, but otherwise there's nothing written which gives us an idea what that date represents. Maybe she can be asked to do a supplementary affidavit and saying, tell us what that date represents, and then you can comment on it to see whether what it means.
No, I take that, Mr. Chair, but again, I am asked to comment on a document that's in here.
Yeah.
And I am telling you from what I see, and I'm commenting on the issues that you're presenting with me in terms of the document.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
take your point that maybe when she comes, she can
Yes.
explain. And maybe at the same time, she can explain as to why the serendipity invoice is 53,270 and her invoice is 60.
Just repeat that point.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, if you look at the serendipity invoice, the total,
A person, maybe my client must just, when he deals with the invoices, refer to the annexure numbers and the pages so we're all on the same page.
Yeah, let's, well, it's important to refer to at least the page. It's
So on
just
one-
that these page numbers are long.
longer. So it's 1565.16, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, okay.
If you look at the invoice totals,
Yeah,
and then you'll see there's a line below that says less to card.
yes.
So it's 53,270. Okay? So that is effectively the total that was the cost of these tickets from Serendipity. Then you will see that the 1565.17, which is the travel excellence invoice, you now have an amount of 60,000 in there.
Yeah,
Okay? So there's a discrepancy of 7,000.
yeah, yeah.
And it's all allocated to airport taxes, which is not
Which is
correct.
high. Yeah, okay.
And also, Mr. Chair, I would understand that, yes, Travel Excellence has to charge for their service. So there would be a discrepancy between serendipity and Travel Excellence,
Yeah,
but not to the value of 7,000.
yeah. Yeah, she can be asked to deal with all the queries you raise insofar as they need to be explained.
Yeah.
But this one, the point is you accept that she made bookings for you. It was at your request for you and your partner to travel to Dubai and back on the dates given. I guess the next thing is, did you pay her to settle whatever the invoice was, whether it was 60,000 rand or whatever, in regard to this trip?
Mr. Chair, I think a general comment across all of the travels is
About
that,
payment.
as I said, I paid for all of them.
You paid all of them?
I paid for all of them.
Okay. Would
In the
you-
manner I described to you.
Yes. Would you have any proof of payment in regard to payments you made for these trips, where you had requested them to make bookings for you?
Mr. Chair, I will have to check, but I don't think.
Yeah. But where you made payment by way of cash, because you said there would have been such occasions, they would have had to issue you with receipts, I would imagine.
Yes, Mr. Chair, but I don't think I have kept any of them.
Yes. And where you paid by way of EFT, that should be able to be traced in your accounts, bank accounts.
Mr. Chair, I think if there were occasions when that happened, there would be those records.
Sorry?
I said on the occasions when those happen, there would be those records. Unfortunately, for me to go back and access them, all my bank accounts have been closed. So accessing bank records is a bit problematic.
Yes. But to the extent that the commission might be able to trace that, if your cooperation is required, you would give your cooperation.
Mr. Chair, we'll consider it together.
You'll consider it. Yeah, because the commission, the banks have been quite cooperative whenever the commission has issued with them with summonses to disclose certain information. They have, generally speaking, been very cooperative. So, of course, some of it may be done without your consent, but to the extent that your cooperation might be required, that's why I was asking. But you have said that you and your legal team would consider.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, all right. But again, her version here is quite clear, namely that it was Mr. Essa who settled this invoice. She says Mr. Essa paid via EFT to her net bank account, and she subsequently transferred the money from her net bank account to the account of Travel Excellence. So I take it that you are not in a position to deny whether Mr. Essa made some payment to her in regard to this trip, and she moved the money from her net bank account into the account of Travel Excellence. All you are saying is, one, you never asked Mr. Essa to do that. Two, you don't see any need why Mr. Essa would have done that, because he had not been involved in this booking. You had requested the booking yourself. And three, you say you paid.
That's correct, Mr.
So if Mr. Essa made some payment, maybe that's their own thing, but you settled this account on your own.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
And Mr. Chair, not to forget that And I'll come back to the discrepancies in the invoices are a big issue.
Are a big issue.
Are a big issue.
No,
And
I
you'll see,
understand
and you'll
that.
see why.
No, I understand that. Okay, Mr. Seleka?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say on that aspect, Chair, it's a inter partes transaction. If Mr. Singh says he was overcharged, he must go after travel excellence.
No.
The commission, what are we going to do with it?
Let's not get this incorrect, Mr. Seleka.
Yeah.
I did not say I was overcharged.
Well, I'm saying if you say you were overcharged.
That is why I'm saying I was not overcharged.
Oh, okay.
Because this invoice is a fabricated invoice. I'm telling you, this invoice has been created to equal an amount that appears on the bank statement.
Okay, wait. Because I also wanted to comment on that. The invoice, let's go to it, is dated 31 July 2014. That's the invoice on page 1565.17.
Sorry, what?
1565.17. The one we've been dealing with.
That's the invoice.
Say again?
That's the invoice.
Yes, that's travel excellence invoice.
Yes.
31 July 2014. You see that?
That is correct.
Yeah. Now, they say they received payment on 6 August 2014. That is on page 1565.19.
1565.19.
Yes.
That is correct.
And then there is that electronic banking transfer they're talking about on the page before that. Also dated August, 5 August 2014, which is the very first entry, TX date. And the amount is 60,000. The amount is 60,000 on that receipt. So I'm not sure, what are you saying the invoice has been created to match the amount? Because the invoice comes before the payment.
I could also, we've dealt with backdating quite significantly in this commission.
We've dealt with?
I've said we've dealt with backdating of documents quite extensively.
No, only insofar as it relates to your MSA, your letter.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair, I think as I've said, in my view, if you look at the receipt, if Ms. Suleiman is to continue with this thread, Ms. Suleiman should then have produced a travel excellence bank statement that reflects the deposit of 60,000. Here, there's just this rudimentary receipt that's again produced. Okay? That references Mr. SIN and EFT. Similarly, Mr. Chair, in terms of this electronic banking contrast, there's no stamp as to where this thing originates from. There's the authenticity of this, I'm not too sure what it is like. And it only reflects a deposit. So where is the payment?
You're now talking about Mr. Esa's payment.
Mr. Chair, if you look at 1565.18, it's purported to be a bank statement
Yes.
that reflects an amount of 60,000 being paid to Ms. Suleiman.
Yeah.
I think. And then Ms. Suleiman asserts that this amount was then transferred to the Travel Excellence bank account. So, on her version, I would have expected her to have a bank statement that reflects her bank statement,
Yeah.
that reflects a contra of 60,000 that's going out. And then a Travel Excellence bank statement to show 60,000 coming in. Just to deal with her version.
Yeah.
Not in relation to my ticket and
Yeah.
what I paid.
Yes.
So that is the deficiencies that we have with this.
Yeah. No, that's fine. Those points should be raised with Ms. Solomon, so that she can deal with them maybe in a supplementary affidavit, but she must still come and give evidence. Maybe she'll deal with that. But some of the points that Mr. Singh is raising are things that should be easy to address.
Chairperson, there's one more, and based on the points that was raised by my clients, of course, it's very easy through metadata to establish when a document was generated and when not. So that's a further point that can potentially be looked at.
Well, also, I mean, if the relevant banks can just produce these documents, then it's very objective, and so that would be that should be easy to just obtain the relevant documents from the bank. But if Mr. Singh, it is true that Mr. Salim Essa did pay Travel Excellence in respect of this, in respect of your traveling, even if he did so without, or if he did so without you having asked him, or without any arrangement between the two of you. Are you able to say why he would do that? In other words, an amount, let us say, according to Ms. Solomon, an amount of 60,000 rand was paid by Mr. Salim Essa in respect of your traveling and your partner's traveling. Now, I understand the issues you have raised about this bank statement, but let's assume that in the end, the banks provide proof of the payments, and it's established that indeed Mr. Salim Essa made the payment. Why would he make a payment in respect of your traveling and your partner's traveling?
Well, Mr. Chair, I can emphatically say that he never did so.
Well, I guess that you can't say that because you were not there to see whether he made the payment. What you can say is you never asked him.
Chairperson,
No, Mr. Chair, I'm saying he never made payments on my behalf.
On your
behalf.
Oh.
Chairperson, sorry, with the greatest of respect, my client stated it as a fact, and I thought we were dealing with facts. He paid for this ticket.
No, I'm not dealing with that. If after all the evidence is in, Mr. Singh, the fact remains that Mr. Salim Essa made payment to Travel Excellence, and that payment was in regard to your trip and your partner's trip. If you never asked him to do so, and if there was no arrangement between the two of you that he should pay for it, why would he do that? Because that question will arise if, as a matter of fact, when all the evidence is in, the fact stares us in our face that Mr. Salim Essa did make the payment on the date given by Ms. Solomon, and that the payment was in regard to your trip and your partner's trip, the two of you. So I'm saying the question that will stare us in the face is, if you never asked him to pay for you, if there was no arrangement between the two of you that he should pay for you, why would he have paid this amount?
This isn't hypothetical, Mr. Chair.
No, it's not hypothetical in the sense that if the bank documents that will be asked for, if they reveal that, it will be a reality. Of course, if they reveal that there was no payment, that's the end of the matter. No payment by Mr. Essa, that's the end of that matter.
Okay, let's deal with it like this, Mr. Chair. As you said, when you started this line of inquiry, you said, I cannot actually say or not say
Yes.
whether Mr. Essa paid or didn't pay.
Yes, yes.
These amounts,
Yes,
not for
yes.
my travel.
Yes.
Let's leave the travel aside. So if they are indeed amounts that Mr. Essa would have paid for to Ms. Sulam, for whatever reason, those things may have happened, but it's not necessarily that he paid for my travel. Let's, in your case, Mr. Chair, you're opposing to me. If the bank statements come back and it reflects these 60,000 amounts, as Ms. Suleiman alludes to, I still find it difficult to understand how it will be then associated with the fact that it was for my travel.
Well, this is what I'm raising with you. You were not there when, according to Ms. Suleiman, she had communication with Mr. Salim Essa about this payment. She says that the payment was made by Mr. Salim Essa was for your trip. Okay. Now, I was suggesting to you earlier on that you can't deny what was said between the two of them because you were not there.
That's true.
Okay. But what you can say is, if Mr. Salim Essa said to Ms. Suleiman he was paying for your trip, he was saying so without you having requested him to do that. That's what you can say. And it might surprise you, that is another thing. But if I were to believe Ms. Solomon that this is what she was told by Mr. Solomon, then I would then come back and say, well, on the one hand, you say you never asked Mr. Solomon, but we all know the trip did happen.
Yes.
And Ms. Solomon, based on her affidavit, it seems is not going to say you paid for this amount. Based on this, I don't know when she comes what she will say, but based on this, it looks like she will say, it's Mr. Solomon Essa who paid. And then I will have to ask myself the question, but what are the probabilities that Mr. Solomon Essa would pay this amount, say to Ms. Solomon, I'm paying for Mr. Singh's trip, without the two of them having spoken, without an arrangement? That's what I will be faced with. And I'm giving you a chance to say, this is how this can be explained, if there is an explanation that can be given. But you might say, well, I don't know how it could happen, and I can't offer any explanation. All I can say is I never asked him to, and I paid for the trip myself.
Well, that's where it stays, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, okay, all right. Mr. Selaga?
Thank you, Chair. Let's go back to Ms. Suleiman's affidavit. Well, I must just say this part is not captured in the Transnet request to you. Okay. So let's go to paragraph 22.3 of Ms. Suleiman's affidavit.
Sorry, what page are you on now, sir?
Page 1565.5.
1565.
Yeah. The 6th November trip. Paragraph 22.3.
I'm there, sir.
Thank you. The booking was requested for Mr. Singh to fly from Johannesburg on 6 November 2014 to Dubai and back to Johannesburg on 9 November 2014. I cannot recall who made the request. Mr. Singh was issued with ticket number 4724296595, CSS9. The total cost was 55,775 rand, which was charged to Mr.Essa's account, CSS10. From my recollection, I received a call from Mr. Singh, who informed me that a driver would be dropping off cash to settle their account. As per Mr. Singh's advice, a driver dropped off the cash on 11 November 2014. I attach here to the receipt issued 11 November 2014, CSS 11. This amount was deposited into our bank account together with other cash we had on hand. The amount deposited on 11 November 2014, inclusive of the 55,775 rand, amounted to 65,700 rand. Well, the first question, again, Mr. Singh, is whether there was a booking for you from
I
Johannesburg.
guess, Mr. Selega, it's better to start with the question whether there was a trip
Okay.
on those dates to that destination. Did you travel, Mr. Singh, from Johannesburg? Did you travel on 6 November 2014 from Johannesburg to Dubai? Did you come back from Dubai on 9 November 2014?
Sorry, Mr.
We are at paragraph 22.3, page 1565.5.
Yes,
There was a trip.
there was a trip.
Okay, and it was to Dubai, from Joburg to Dubai, and from Dubai to Johannesburg, and on the dates given there.
That is
You agree?
correct.
Okay, all right.
That is correct.
Okay, then the next thing is whether it's true that the booking was made by Travel Excellence.
Yes, Mr.
That's all. And then the next question is, who requested the booking?
Mr. Chair, I would have.
Sorry?
I would have.
You would have. Okay, all right. And what do you say about the payment? She says she received a call from you, and you informed her that a driver would be dropping off cash to settle the account. And she says the account was 55,775 rand.
I'm just getting there, to the relevant annexure.
Maybe the amount should be the last thing, because we might need to check. But in terms of you having called and told her a driver would deliver the cash to her, do you recall that?
Mr. Chair, I think it was basically the same as I explained to you before. That I would have paid for this.
Yeah.
In terms of the method of payment, we'll have to check and get back.
Okay, but you would have paid it
Yes, I would.
either cash or...
Or some method.
Okay, all right. So the use of a driver, you say you did not use a driver to drop cash to pay this.
Mr. Chair, in terms of this specific one, I cannot recall. I said in this specific instance, I cannot recall.
You cannot recall?
Yes.
It is possible?
Yes, Mr.
Okay, all right. Okay, Mr. Selega. Or do you want to say anything about the amount?
I was just going to go to the particular annex.
SS10.
SS10.
Okay.
Page 1565.21.
Mr. Chair, other than again the discrepancy in terms of the airport taxes, I think nothing else that I want to raise around the invoice.
Okay, no, that's fine. Okay. And the dates of payment that she gives there, you don't take issue with the dates, or do you?
Mr. Chair, I see that there's a Travel Excellence bank statement at SS12 that reflects an amount of 65,700 again,
Yeah,
and she explains this by virtue of the fact that there was other cash
Yeah.
that needed to be deposited.
yes,
So again, Mr. Chair, I don't see a bank stamped slip
Yes.
that indicates how the 65 was made up.
yes,
Normally, you would go and deposit or indicate, this is the makeup of this 65.
okay,
And it's made up of 55 or 50 or from this person or that person or something. So I don't see that.
okay. Mr. Selega?
Chair, I didn't get the answer to your question, whether, Mr. Singh, you take issue with the cash receipt.
With it? No, he said he doesn't
doesn't,
take issue with
okay.
that. I asked him about the dates. That's what do you take issue with the dates that she gives for payment?
No, Mr.
No.
No,
Okay.
No, that's
All
fine.
right. Mr. Silica?
So just out of interest, Chair, if we might go again to the Transnet file, 5 bracket B, page 427. Because this particular trip is reflected there. 427, Mr. Singh, paragraph 1.13.6.
This is on the 10-6 notice.
Yes. So again is you're required, let me wait for you, 427. You are there? 1.13.6. Yeah. Relates to your return trip to Dubai between...
I'm sorry, Mr. Silica. Is it possible to pull your mic closer to you, or is it not movable?
Nothing.
Okay, yeah. All right.
Thank you, Chair. Relates to your return trip to Dubai between 6 November 2014 to 9 November 2014. The dates coincide with Ms. Suleiman's. You shared a flight to Dubai with Mr. Salim Essa on EK 766. Shall we first deal with that?
Well, do you want to, or I thought you would take us to the answer.
Yes.
Because
that's
if there's an answer,
that's
let's
right.
look at the answer before he says anything.
Yes, the answer.
But maybe you read the whole of that, of 1.13.6.
Should
Then
I?
we go to the answer.
Okay. So the first part is the second part. You shared a flight to Dubai with Mr. Salim Essa on EK 766. The following individuals were in Dubai during the same period. Chair, should I read
Yeah?
the names of these individuals? Mr. Ashok Narayan, Mr. Sanjay Grover, Mr. Gezinglizio,
Vincent Zuma.
Vincent Zuma, thank you, Chair. Mr. Zwela Ke,
Nhlanganiso Nchebe.
Ms. Julia Basetsana Kumalo, Yuvan Naidu, Mr. Abraham Stephanus Berger, Mr. Mohammed Imtiaz Ahmed Patel, and Mr. Mohammed Iqbal Surf. Survey.
And then let's go to the
Mr. Singh must
answer.
help me. Mr. Singh's affidavit, the relevant paragraph is on page 482 of the same Transnet, the same bundle, yes.
482.
482. Paragraph 60, 61, 62. So Mr. Singh answers at paragraph 1.13.36, return trip, Dubai, 6 November 2014 to 9 November 2014. Paragraph 60, I confirm that I traveled, returned to Dubai on the dates set out above. 61. Now 61, Chair, is an answer to, you shared a flight to Dubai with Mr. Salim Essa on EK 766. Mr. Singh answers, I have no knowledge whether the individuals, oh no, which one are you answering? Let's go to 62. Sorry, Chair. He answers at 62. Lastly, I take note of the allegation that I allegedly shared a flight with Salim Essa. I, however, deny that I knew that he was on the same flight.
I think, well, one, it seems Mr. Singh admits that he traveled to Dubai and back to Johannesburg on the dates given in the directive. He has no knowledge he says he has no knowledge whether the individuals listed in the directive in that paragraph were also in Dubai during the period mentioned. And he doesn't deny that Mr. Salim Essa was in the same flight, but he says he was not aware of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that correct? Mr.
Now, is the relevant paragraph of the directive, which is responded to here, doesn't coincide with 22.3 of Ms. Solomon's affidavit?
Yes, Chair.
That's correct?
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
So you said, Mr. Singh, in effect, you're saying there's nothing strange about paragraph 22.3 about the trip, because you requested Ms. Solomon to make that booking, and she made it, and you traveled, and you paid them.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Obviously, Mr. Singh, this is in November 2014. You would have known Mr. Essa at this time.
I have no recollection specifically, Mr. Chair, of when I actually, as I said, met Mr. Essa. I don't think I can answer the question definitively.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let's continue.
Let's move on. Paragraph 22.4.
We're back on that.
We are back at Ms. Suleiman's affidavit. This is towards the end of 2014, Mr. Singh. You were at Transnet at the time. This is November 2014.
Sorry, which paragraph are we?
Sorry, I just want to piggyback on the last point.
On which paragraph?
Yeah. About.
It just wants you to confirm that towards the end of 2014, you were still at Transnet.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And I thought I understood that you had on a couple of occasions met with Mr. Salim Essa in 2014.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And you just don't recall when was that?
No.
So you knew Mr. Essa towards or by the end of 2014, you knew Mr. Essa?
Well, Mr. Chair, I think I said that it was probably in 2013, 2014 timeframe.
Yes.
Well, I thought you said 2012, 2013.
Yeah, that's 2012, 2013 timeframe.
Yes.
And I thought you also said once or twice.
Yeah.
That's right.
So,
but you have agreed when Mr. Selega says on a couple of occasions. So that seems to me to make it more than once or twice, but maybe not really. But it's once or twice.
Yes,
that's right. And around 2013.
That is correct, Mr.
And not 2014.
No.
Okay.
so this is a man you would recognize if he was on the same flight with you, or on the same bus, or train, or car.
Well, a train could be very long. if you are in the same coach.
Flight, yes. You would
Well,
recognize
the question is whether, based on the fact that in 2012, 2013, you had met him once or twice, whether in 2014, if you met him in the same flight in which you were traveling, you would recognize him.
Mr. Chair, I think I would have recognized him, but I did not meet him on the flight.
You did not record it. You did not see him on the occasion.
No.
No.
Okay. So let's go then to paragraph 22.4 of Ms. Suleiman's affidavit. Eskom Bundle 18, bracket C, a booking was requested for Mr. Singh to fly from Johannesburg on 23 February 2015 to Dubai and back to Johannesburg on 26 February 2015. I cannot...
You were frequenting Dubai, Mr. Singh, in 2014 and early 2015. Yes, continue, Mr. Slega.
Where was I? I cannot recall.
22.4.
Yes. I cannot recall who made the request. Mr. Singh was issued with ticket number 1959 734-196, CSS 13. The total cost was 31,000 rand, which was charged to Mr. S's account, SS 14. From my recollection, I received a call from Mr. Singh, who informed me that a driver would be dropping off cash to settle the account. As per Mr. Singh's advice, the driver dropped off the cash to myself, which was deposited with reference S.ESA on 6 March 2015, CSS 15. The reason the deposit reference reflects S.ESA was because the amount was used to settle Mr. Esa's account. I also attach here to the receipt issued, dated 6 March 2015, CSS 16. Again, Mr. Singh, the trip between those dates, 23 February 2015 to 26 February 2015, do you confirm it?
Yes.
From Johannesburg to Dubai?
I confirm it.
You confirm.
So you confirm that on 23 February 2015, you flew from Johannesburg to Dubai, and on 26 February 2015, flew back from Dubai to Johannesburg. Okay? And who had requested Ms. Solomon to make the booking?
Mr. Chair, that would have been me.
Sorry?
I did, Mr.
You did, okay. Continue, Mr. Solomon.
Yes. And you also confirm the facts regarding payment? You calling her, saying the driver would come to drop off the cash?
Mr. Just as I've said in the previous response, I'm not too sure about this part, but at the end of the day, I paid for the trips.
Yes, you can't remember
Yes.
whether you sent a driver, but you made the payment.
Yes.
And can you recall whether it was in cash, or you say it might have been in cash, it might have been in some other way?
Some other form.
Yes.
But as I said, we will look into it.
Yes. And do you take issue with the amount?
Mr. Chair, we'll have to go to the...
Would have to go there.
back to the...
But if you say more or less, it's fine, I don't know if we need to go there, because you may be making the same points that you have made in regard to the others. But if you make a different point, that's different.
Well, Mr. Chair, just two things.
You want us to go there?
If we can go to SS 14,
Yeah, okay.
which is 1565.
SS 14, What's the page? 1565?
1565.25.
25.
Okay, I'm there.
The first point, Mr. Chair, is if you look at Ms. Suleiman's statement, she says that I was scheduled to fly on the 23rd and return on the 26th, per paragraph 22.4.
Yes.
However, Mr. Chief, if you go to 1565.25,
Yes.
you see that there's a return date of the 1st of March.
Yes.
So the statement obviously is incorrect in terms of the return date
Yeah.
of the 26th. It should be the 1st of March if the invoice is to be correct.
Yeah.
Then you will see, Mr. Chair, if you look at the first FA column, the airport tax column, and the total column. If you take the airfare and you add it to the airport taxes, which is 20,000 plus 20,000, it does not give you a total of 30,000. That total should be 40,000. And then if you add 1,000 to that, the grand total should be 41,000. But then if you look at the total columns at the bottom, the 10 plus the 20 plus the 10 gives you 31. It doesn't give you 41. So again,
You say there is a discrepancy with the numbers, with the figures.
Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Yes, yes. But other than that, you admit the trip, but you say you paid for yourself.
That is correct, Mr. Chair. But the reason why I raised this issue with the discrepancy on the invoice is because it is used to justify a deposit or deposits or EFTs that have been made that can be proved.
Yes.
Yet the substance of this invoice does not make sense.
Yes. Yeah.
So
okay, all
I
right.
think that's all I want to know.
Okay, no, that's fine. Then continue, Mr. Siliga.
Thank you, Chair. So if we may again go to the Transnet, 5, bracket B, page 427.
Sorry. 1 second.
Page 427, paragraph 1.13.5, which seems to correlate with Ms. Suleiman's affidavit, paragraph 22.4.
Mr. Siliga, can I disturb you and ask you something else that I don't want to forget?
Yes, Chair.
And I remember it because I'm going to ask that your team works on my bundle to indicate per paragraph what Mr. Singh's response was, where he says, I admit that this trip did happen
I see.
on that date, from there to there and back. But I requested the booking. I didn't send a driver, or I'm not sure I sent a driver, but I made the payment. In regard to each paragraph, I would like something like that.
Yes, Chair.
But precisely because I now wanted to ask you to make sure your team can do that, I remembered that there's a homework that your team was supposed to do in regard to Eskom, that document relating to Mr. Tsotsi and Ms. Lynn Brown about the composition of the various committees. You will recall that some
Yes.
time back,
Yes,
I had asked that your team should work on that and produce
correct,
a document.
correct.
Initially, the document that had been produced was not correct. I said it should be
Correct.
redone. And last time we talked about it, I said, your team must give me the document. I haven't received it. Now, I didn't want to forget that because it's important. So
Yes,
if you can make sure that I get that not later than tomorrow.
yes,
Yeah, that one. But in regard to this one, this is the request I'm making.
yes.
Okay?
That's right, Chair.
Okay, all right. So you can continue. So I'm
Yes.
hoping I can get this one not later than Monday.
Yes, yes, we should be
Yeah.
able to provide to the
Yeah, okay.
I'll do it myself, Chair.
Okay, okay. I disturbed you while you were on something, so
Yes. No, but I'm fine.
yes.
Mr. Singh, that's Eskom, Transnet, 5 bracket B, page 427, paragraph 1.13.5, which I said seemed to correspond with Ms. Suleiman's paragraph 22.4. So this relates to return trip to Dubai between 23 February 2015 and 1 March 2015. So I think, is that one of the discrepancy we are trying to point out in the invoice or the air ticket? That it has a date of 1 March.
That is correct.
So it seems to be here.
I agree.
You see, okay, thank you. The following individuals were in Dubai during the same period. And the names are there, Chairperson. Some of them are difficult to pronounce for me.
Tell me which ones are difficult to pronounce.
Can I read the ones which are familiar? Mr. Salim Essa is also there.
Well, tell me when you are stuck. I will
Okay.
come to your aid.
Thank you, Chair. So there's Akash Ghat, Ashok Narayan, Sanjay Groover, Vivian Keith Oates. Mr. Singh, may I pause there? We haven't asked you whether you knew these people or you know them. Do you know these people? You don't know Akash Ghat?
Okay.
Do you know Akash, Mr. Akash Ghat?
No, sir.
Ashok Narayan,
No, sir.
Sanjay Groover,
No, sir.
Vivian Keith Oates?
I do, sir.
You do. How do you know him?
If it is indeed the same Vivian Keith Oates that I know, then it would be, he was the head of internal audit at Eskom, at Transnet.
At Transnet.
Yes, on behalf of Ernst & Young.
On behalf of Ernst & Young.
That's correct.
Thank you. Shamim Sheikh?
No,
You do not. Is that Mogamed Rafiq Vargas?
no.
Rajesh Kumar Gupta?
Mr. Chair, as I testified before, I know Mr. Gupta.
You know Mr. Gupta. Mr. Rajesh Gupta. Riaz Saluji?
No,
Michael Andrew Thomas Harley?
no,
Abram Stefanos Berger?
no.
Salim Aziz Essa?
As I testified, I've met him once or twice.
So the answer is yes.
Yes.
Stefan Nell?
No,
Zwela K? Nhlanganiso?
Sanganiso.
no, sir.
Nche. You don't know him.
No,
Hamza Farouki?
no, sir.
Michael Rodenberg?
No, sir.
Patrick Makubedu?
No, sir.
Kim Valerie Davids?
If it is indeed Miss Brown's PA, then I've met her in her official capacity.
So the answer is yes.
Yes.
Now there's Lynette Brown. I don't know whether that's Linnell or Lynette Brown. Could that be the minister? Do you know?
He might
Well,
not be able
if this refers to the minister, then I know the minister, but if it is not the minister, then I don't know who this is.
And Mabui Kanyo Imogen Mashazi.
No, sir.
No.
No.
Well, they say they were in Dubai at the same time as you. Your affidavit is on page 481. On page 481, you provide information in response. At paragraph 1.13.5, return trip to Dubai, 23 February 2015 to 1 March 2015. Paragraph 58, you say, I confirm that I traveled, returned to Dubai on the dates set out above.
Sorry, sir, where are you? Page
481
48.
of the same bundle.
Paragraph
58.
58.
I've read 58, you confirm the dates. 59, you say, I have no knowledge whether the individuals listed in this paragraph were in Dubai during the period mentioned, since I have not been provided with any proof thereof.
Mr. Seleka, let me complete what I would like to be done to make my job easier.
Yes.
I need a document that will link what the paragraphs in Ms. Solomon's affidavit, link it with the questions in the directive, yes, link it with the answers in Mr. Singh's affidavit, so that one can see it at the same time.
Correct.
Yeah.
And his answers.
Yeah,
before
and
you
his
know.
answers, yes, yeah. Okay, all right. So now, this answer at paragraph 58 and 59, paragraphs 58 and 59, relates to what paragraph in Ms. Solomon's affidavit?
22.4.
22.4.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. So, that trip, Mr. Singh, which you have admitted, was it a Transnet business trip or was it a personal trip?
The
one dealt with in paragraph 22.4 of Ms. Solomon's affidavit that you deal with in the paragraph that we have just looked at in your affidavit, namely paragraphs 58 and 59.
Mr. Chair, they're personal.
Personal?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I'm not sure whether we asked him in regard to each of the trips because it becomes important to know whether it was personal or
Yes.
or business, because his affidavit doesn't always indicate whether it was personal or business.
Correct, yeah. We know, Mr. Singh, you've at least identified one, which is the first one of 8 June 2014, as according to your recollection, is I think it's 2.
No, Mr. Chair. If you look at, let's make it easy. Of all the flights that are covered by Ms. Solomon, they're all barring one, and we'll come to the one now.
Yes.
Private trips.
Okay.
The one that we have a little bit of a contention with is the first one.
Yes, okay.
Which I'm saying, she records it, but
Yeah.
I'm saying I have a different version as to
Yes,
how that
yeah.
happened.
Okay, no, that helps.
Okay.
Then we know that except that one, your version is all the others which you admit as were private.
Yes. Mr. Chair, your issue comes in when you're looking at the 10.6 direct.
Yes, okay.
There's a mixture there.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. No, that's fine.
Okay. So at least the ones in this affidavit, except for one, are private, personal.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Let's complete what you need to ask him about paragraph 22.4. Then let's take an adjournment, a 10 minutes adjournment. We'll take the 10 minutes adjournment, and then when we come back, I'll hear what is going to happen about the evening session from the work stream concerned and lawyers involved. So we'll interpose, and then, depending on what I'm told, we'll take it from there.
yes.
Okay. Do you still have questions on that paragraph?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, Mr. Singh, have we? You accepting everything there with the payments as well?
Well, not everything. He doesn't accept the issue of a driver, but says he's not sure whether he would have sent a driver, but
Yes.
he says in the end, the payment came from him. Is that right, Mr. Singh?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
And the amount, 31,000 rand?
Mr. Chair,
You have commented.
I've commented on that in terms of the discrepancy on the
Yeah.
invoice.
Okay.
Yeah.
But your recollection of what you paid?
Mr. Chair, as I said, I don't have a recollection of the exact amounts like
Okay.
in the previous.
Okay.
But the issue of the invoice
Yeah.
discrepancy linking to the deposit in the bank statement is obviously a concern.
Yeah.
So, so the substance of the allegations.
Yeah, I think except for the issue of the driver and the issue of the discrepancy in the amount,
Yeah.
the invoice. In substance, he
The
accepts.
rest is.
Yeah.
Chair,
Okay.
Yeah, it might be an opportune time.
Yeah. Let's take a 10 minutes adjournment, then we adjourn.
Thank you.
just interposing at this stage for me to be informed what the state of affairs is with regard to the evening session that was planned. I was going to hear Ms. Norma Kikaba's evidence. Mr. Maibek, do you want to tell me anything?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. We did, during the course of the morning, receive a letter from Ms. Kagaba's attorneys advising that she withdraws from her participation in the commission. Ms. Kagaba's attorney is here. She has a copy of the letter. Might I suggest that she be allowed to address you and hand up the letter formally?
Yes, okay, all right. If you can do it, if your mic is working, you can do it from where you are. That's fine. Just make sure your mic is working, or otherwise they can sanitize the podium and then you can.
Okay. I think it is working, Chair.
Oh, okay, all right.
Okay.
I think you can just start by placing yourself on record, and then you can tell me what you need to tell me.
Okay. The full name, Gwalisile Makatini from RMT Attorneys.
Yes,
I represent Ms. Norma Kikaba.
yes.
Okay. We received instructions, Chair, last night that Ms. Kikaba would like to withdraw her participation from the commission. And I, this morning, addressed the letter to the commission advising it of that to that effect.
Yes. Would you like to read that letter into the record?
Yes, Chair. Okay. To the Secretary of the Commission, as advised by the Commission on Friday, 9 April 2021, that our client, Ms. Ngoma, was scheduled to give evidence before the Commission today, the 13th April 2021. 2, this letter serves to inform the Commission that as of late yesterday, we received instructions from our client informing us of 1, her personal concerns with how various aspects regarding her proposed appearance at the Commission has been handled or allegedly mishandled by the Commission. And 2, her decision to therefore withdraw her participation in the work of the Commission. We are further instructed to inform the Commission accordingly of the above, as we hereby do.
Okay. Is there anything you are able to tell me other than what's in the letter about her decision?
There is nothing, Chair, as
Nothing
I've not yet even had an opportunity to consult in detail,
Yes.
other than what she discussed with me before writing this letter.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Maibek, what do you say about this situation?
Well, we're not apprised of precisely the detail of Ms. Garber's complaints in relation to the Commission. Obviously, those are things that can be addressed in the course of the evidence. What we would like to place on record for present purposes, DCJ, is the letter came as something of a surprise to us because Ms. Kigaba was scheduled to give evidence remotely from Cape Town on Friday afternoon. The next thing that we learnt of was this letter. And I think precious little could have happened between Friday afternoon and Tuesday morning. But that we can deal with in time. What we propose to do is then to issue a summons so that Ms. Kigaba is compelled to come and give evidence before you. She, of course, then will be at liberty to detail whatever her concerns are.
Yes.
We understand that it's obviously difficult for you to schedule her evidence immediately as of now, but we just do point out that obviously for the purpose of the summons, the sooner we get a date, the better, because then we can issue the summons.
Yeah.
And I think it would probably be in the interest of everyone that her evidence be heard sooner than later.
Yes.
You also know, DCJ, that Mr. Gigaba himself has brought an application to, in the first instance, suppress the evidence of Ms. Gigaba. So when the matter is set down again, it may be most practical that Mr. Gigaba's application is then heard before Ms. Gigaba gives it.
Yes. No, that's fine. It is surprising that she made this decision. She was scheduled to give evidence on, I think, Friday. We were told, I was told, she was ready to do so via Zoom or virtually from Cape Town. And then I adjourned the hearing of her evidence to this afternoon or evening. And so I wonder what is that could have happened in the meantime. But it seems to me that you are right in saying that she should be compelled to give evidence, and if she has anything to say, she will say it after the summons has been issued and when she appears in response to the summons. So I do authorize that a summons be issued against her. I will give a date to the legal team to give to insert in the summons as to when she must appear before the commission. So, yes, and then with regard to Mr. Gigaba's application, that will be set down for hearing before the commencement of Ms. Gigaba's evidence on the day that she will be required to give evidence. So let's leave it at that, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Yeah.
May we be excused?
You are excused.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, then we can resume with Mr. Singh's evidence. Have you had a chance to sanitize properly?
Yeah.
Okay.
I see.
Fine.
Our helper might be sleepy.
Did they go on strike? Okay, all right.
Thank you, Chair.
We have an understanding that we'll try and
Yes.
finish or adjourn at about 5:45.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Mr. Singh, we unfortunately won't be able to finish again today because we could have gone beyond, but everybody thought we would have finished earlier, which hasn't happened, and your council had other commitments, and we need to accommodate that. And another day will be arranged for you to finish one of the evenings. Okay, all right. Let's
Thank you,
continue.
Mr. Singh, back to Eskom Bundle 18, at Ms. Suleiman's affidavit, 18 bracket B, page 1565.5. paragraph 25.5. Are you there? The booking was requested for Mr. Singh to fly from Johannesburg on 11 June 2015 to Dubai and back to Johannesburg on 15 June 2015. I cannot recall who requested the booking. Mr. Singh was issued with ticket number 9242812055, CSS 17. The total cost was 30,075 rand, which was charged to Mr. Singh's account, CSS 18. From my
To
recollection...
Mr. Essa's account, you said Singh.
Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon.
To Mr. Essa's
To
account.
Mr. Essa's account, CSS 18. From my recollection, I received a call from Mr. Singh, who informed me that a driver would be dropping off cash to settle the account. As per Mr. Singh's advice, the driver dropped off the cash on 13 June 2015. I attach here to the receipt issued dated 13 June 2015, CSS 19. The cash was deposited on 17 June 2015 along with other cash on hand, CSS 19.1. Mr. Singh again, do you confirm the trip allegedly requested by yourself from Johannesburg to Dubai and back from Dubai to Johannesburg on the dates mentioned, 11 June 2015 to 15 June 2015?
Mr. Chair, I do confirm.
Yeah. You confirm a request, making the request for that trip
I do, sir.
with travel excellence?
That is correct.
And
The driver,
No, Mr. Chair.
is it a definite no or you can't recall sending a
Ma'am,
driver?
Mr. Chair, it's similar to the other.
Okay.
Yes.
okay, there's
So
no
the-
recollection.
The last time I think you said you don't recall having sent a driver, but you know that payment came from you.
That is correct.
Okay, all right.
The same as
Yes.
Same
the
as, yeah.
same as here.
I guess unless there is an issue about discrepancy, we can move to the next booking.
Mr. Chair, at, sorry, at 18, SS 18,
Yeah.
which is on 1565.29,
Yes.
you find the same discrepancy, Mr. Chair, in terms of the invoice,
Yes.
in terms of the airfare and the airport taxes do not add up to the total.
Mr. Singh, can I ask you this? Insofar as you confirm your request, the trips made, the dates are correct, the destinations and back is correct, were you invoiced by Travel Excellence?
From my recollection, yes.
Where are those invoices?
Yeah, I don't have them.
What?
There are no invoices.
Well, I don't recall it. I don't have records.
But you say you do recall that you were sent invoices.
Yes.
Yeah, in regard to some.
Well,
Not
I would
necessarily
have
all.
thought that all of them, Mr. Chair, but I don't recall
Yeah,
them
okay.
in detail.
Okay. Well, you know, Mr. Selega, maybe Mr. Singh could identify in regard to the next paragraphs, or is it only two left, two or three?
Yes.
Oh, okay, all right. Whether his answer in regard to this one is the same for the rest, because then it was going to be quicker. But if it's only two left, then
Yeah,
we
we'll
can
do the same exercise.
we can just go through each one of them.
Yes, so does it mean we will not be able to obtain the invoices from you?
No, Mr. Chair.
No. Okay, you can then,
Plus proof of payment,
okay, yes,
or receipts from you. You can provide that, but you say to the extent extent that you may have paid by EFT, that should be reflected in the bank records, but you don't have access to those. That's what you say. If the commission is able to get those, you expect that those records would show the payments you took up.
Mr. Chair, we said that we will consult with council and then.
Oh, okay. No, that's fine, that's fine. Of course, from the commission side, it can ask for bank records in regard to travel excellence accounts, in terms of what payments were given there,
Yes.
which can be identified, whether they reflect what Ms. Suleiman says here.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, so then we need to go to the Transnet bundle because there's a correlation.
Yeah, that's fine.
Transnet bundle 5, bracket B, page 427. Paragraph 1, 113.7. That is the last paragraph on the page. Page 427, Mr. Singh. This relates to retained trip to Dubai between 11 June 2015 to 15 June 2015. You shared a flight to Dubai with Mr. Ashok Narayan on EK 764. The following individuals were in Dubai during the same period. Wow. So Young Jion. Mr. Singh, you said what did you say about Mr. Ashok Narayan? Whether or not you know him?
I said I did not.
You do not. And then there is So Young Jion.
Or should you ask me to confirm each one of these again?
Yeah, whether or not you know.
No, I do not.
Mark Henry, John Paul Verasat,
No, I do not.
Zitulele Nyangana Absalom Sindi,
No, I do not.
Salushni Pillay,
No, I do not.
Arti Gupta,
I do.
you do know. How do you, is it the Mr. or Miss?
It's a Mrs.
Okay. How do you know her?
I think she is the wife to Mr. Rajesh Gupta.
Mr. Rajesh, the next person. Okay, so you know both of them. Zakia Badia,
No, sir.
Salim Aziz Essa.
Yes, sir.
Ooh, please pronounce that one, Mr. Sanjeev Kumar
Madan Lal.
Madan, yeah.
No, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Zakaria Kasim Vahid.
No.
Ashok is already there. David Clive Hersovich.
No.
Ronika Raghavan
I do.
/ Governor. How do you know her?
Mr. Chair, she was either the CEO or held some position within Oak Bay Resources or Tegeta at some stage. So I had interactions with her at Eskom.
You have interacted with her.
Yes.
What, you mind telling the chairperson what the purpose was of the interaction?
I was explaining to Chairperson that if it is indeed the same Ms. Raghavan that worked at Tegeta or either Oak Bay, she was We interacted relating to, I think, the prepayment for 659.
The 659 prepayment?
Yes.
Which we will come to when we deal with the Together transactions.
Indeed, sir.
Yeah. I see. Then, Chair, we go to Mr. Singh's affidavit on page 482, in the same Transnet Bundle 5, bracket B. 482, paragraph 63, 64, 65.
The page number again, sir? Page number?
482. So your answer is to at paragraph 1.13.7, return trip to Dubai, bracket 11 June 2015 to 15 June 2015. Paragraph 63 says, I confirm that I traveled, returned to Dubai on the dates set out above. Now again, according to your earlier explanation, this will be a private trip.
That is correct.
64 says, Mr. Singh, your private trips, I know we haven't asked this, if you're able to tell the chairperson, when they are private, what is it? Is it a holiday you're taking to Dubai? Or is it something you can disclose? It's private and personal.
Mr. Chair, at this point, I would like to believe that they are private and personal.
Okay. 64 says, I have no knowledge whether the individuals listed in this paragraph were in Dubai during the period mentioned, since I have not been provided with any proof thereof. 65 says, lastly, I take note of the allegation that I allegedly shared a flight with Ashok Narayan. I, however, deny that I knew that he was on the same flight. I see that you don't deny knowing him.
Mr. Chair, the 10-6 didn't ask for us to confirm whether we knew these individuals.
Is it because you heard my learned friend whisper that?
Oh, no.
Because you just said that now. You're not allowed to testify.
No, sir, I did not.
Yeah.
She whispered that, Chair.
Yes.
Chairperson, it was not to assist my client. I mean, if Mr. Seleka read the notice, he would have clearly seen it doesn't ask, do you know these people or not?
Yes, but I don't think you should interfere.
It was not to interfere, Chairperson,
Yeah.
not at all.
Okay, all right. Let's
Thank you.
continue.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, Chair, I can traverse issues beyond the directive to Mr. Singh. Mr. Singh, then, let's go back to,
Oh,
Chair, you don't have any question there.
Are you done with, have you dealt with 22.7?
no, we are still.
You are at 22.6?
No, we are still we're just finishing 22.5.
Yeah, let's move on to 22.6 and 22.7 and try and finish that part.
Yes. Mr. Singh, back to Ms. Suleiman's affidavit. Paragraph 22.6. Now, a booking was requested by Mr. Singh for Mr. Singh and partner to fly from Johannesburg on 15 December 2015 to Dubai and back to Johannesburg on 24 December 2015. Mr. Singh and his partner were issued with ticket numbers 1691, 663661 and 1691-663662, respectively CSS20. The total cost of 140,000 Rand was charged to Mr.Essa's account, CSS21. from my recollection, I received a call from Mr. Singh, who informed me that a driver would be dropping off cash to settle the account. As per Mr. Singh's advice, the driver dropped off the cash. I attach here to the receipt issued, dated 21 December 2015. CSS 22. After receipt of the cash, we gave it to a friend of ours who in turn did an EFT for us to the Travel Excellence F&B account in an amount of 140,000 rand on 21 December 2015, CSS 23. We sometimes do this in order to avoid having to pay a cash deposit fee if we deposited the cash at the bank. The same questions follow, Mr. Singh. You confirm your alleged request for yourself and your partner to Travel Excellence for the trip on the dates 15 December 2015 to 24 December 2015.
I do so, sir.
And the places mentioned, from Johannesburg to Dubai and back to Johannesburg.
That is
The amount, 140,000, do you also confirm it?
Mr. Chair, if we have regard to the amount,
Or subject to the usual concerns that you have raised.
yes, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. And the
driver?
The way in which payment was made?
Mr. Chair, as before,
Yeah.
I
You
do
can-
confirm that I have made the payment.
Yeah, okay.
You can't recall how you made the payment?
That's correct.
Okay.
I confirm that the payment was made by me, not
Yes.
Mr.
So you confirm that you made the point payment. What you can't confirm is whether it was cash
yes.
or EFT.
Or driver.
Yeah. Or a driver, do you say, or a driver?
Yes, Mr. As
Okay.
before. Yes.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Chair. There is again, in this case, a correlation in the directive, in the Eskom Transnet Bundle 5, bracket B, page 428.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Before we go there, are we going to deal with the discrepancies on the
The invoice.
yes.
Well, I understood you to be saying, as far as the invoice is concerned, subject to your concern that you have expressed in regard to other bookings about the discrepancy, you had no problem with the amount. I understood you to be saying that. Was I wrong?
No, I'm just saying that the amount in this case is relatively large.
Is it relatively?
large.
Oh, okay. Let's deal with that. Okay, what would you like to say about it?
Mr. Chair, if you go again to 1565.32,
Yes.
as you will see, as we raised before, Mr. Chair, the airport tax, the airfares seem to be correct when cross-referenced to the serendipity invoice, which is reflected on 1565.33. But the airport taxes are completely misrepresented. And if you then look, Mr. Chair, the total of the serendipity invoice is in the region of about 95,500. Yet the amount that's then on the invoice is 140,000. So, Mr. Chair, these discrepancies are rather large.
Yeah.
And even if I was generous, Mr. Chair, I wouldn't be paying such large discrepancies.
Yes.
And Mr. Chair, lastly, again, if you add up all these numbers that appear on this tax invoice, they actually do not come to 140,000. They actually come to 146,560. 144,560.
Yeah. Okay.
They gave you a discount.
Sorry?
Did they give you a discount?
Well, it seems like I was overcharged firstly. And then they decided to give me a discount.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Mr. Silaga?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. And I also see that it's not, the tax invoice doesn't only include flight tickets, it also includes what appears to be Dubai visas ×2, multiple entry, and then the ticketing fee.
That is correct.
There's a correlation again, Chair. So, Mr. Singh, how would you receive invoices from Travel Excellence?
I think, Mr. Chair, it was on WhatsApp or some sort of communication.
On WhatsApp?
Yes.
Or?
I would think it's WhatsApp. I don't think, at that time I didn't really maintain an email address or private email address, but I think it would have been on WhatsApp.
I thought the CFO would be fastidious about these things.
Well, as it relates to my own personal stuff, I'm a bit sloppy.
Okay, what page, Mr. Silaga?
Page, Transnet, 5, bracket B, page 428.
That's Transnet Bundle 5. Bracket.
Yes. 113.8.
Yeah.
You are there, Mr. Singh? It relates to a trip to Dubai between 15 December 2015 and 24 December 2015. That corresponds with paragraph 22.6 in Ms. Suleiman's affidavit. The following individuals were in Dubai during the same period: Mark Henry, those difficult names, Henry John Paul Ferrasat, Zenia Verbeek. Do you know that person, Mr. Singh?
No, I do not know either one of these.
Hamza Faruqi, I've already asked you. Suyang Dion, Ashok Narayan, Aidan Essa.
No.
You don't know that. Seems to be related to Mr. Essa.
I would assume so.
Zinat Osmani, do you know?
No.
Surya Kent Singala,
No.
Arti Gupta, you know? Shubhangi Gupta,
No.
you don't know?
No.
Aman Kant Singala,
No.
Shashank Singala,
No.
Duduzane Zuma,
No.
Duduzane Zuma?
No.
You don't know Mr. Duduzane Zuma?
I know of him.
Oh. You've never met him?
No.
Muhammad Rafiq
No.
Vargas, Rajesh Kumar Gupta?
No.
Yes,
No. Oh, sorry, yes.
yes. Edward Muzi Wokolo Zuma,
No.
Jan Hendrik Christian Small,
No.
Sipati Sylvia Dlamini,
No.
Tabo Sylvester Johnson,
No.
Shamim Sheikh,
No.
Michael Rodenberg,
No.
Tokyo Sehwale.
No.
You don't know Mr. Tokyo Sehwale?
No, sir. I know of him, but I don't know him.
Tokyo Musima Gabriel Sehwale. Ja, I know Wolfgang de Kok,
No, sir.
Zakia Vauda,
No, sir.
Fana Flongwani,
No, sir.
Kolisa Kennedy Mimani,
No, sir.
Tato Motwe Mahashule. Your answer?
No.
No. Thapiso Gift Mahashule,
No, sir.
David Clive
No, sir.
Daskovich,
No, sir.
Timothy Neil Jacobs,
No, sir.
Ayanda Dlodlo,
No, sir.
Mabri Kanyo Imogon Mashazi,
No.
Zakaria Kasim Vahid,
No.
Paul Sean O'Flaherty,
Not too sure if I mean, if it is the ex-CFO of Eskom,
yes,
I may have met him once or twice in CFO forums that for SOCs. So I don't really recall, but if I did, I did in that circumstance.
Okay. David Douglas Des van Rooyen.
No, sir.
You know of him?
I know of him, but I don't know.
Yeah. Prosper Ladislas Agbesi.
No, sir.
Mohammed Nur Kabdi.
No.
You know of him?
Mr. Mohammed Noor Kapadi?
Yeah.
No.
Kuben Taran Moodley.
Kubendran Mudli?
Yes.
No, sir. I know of him.
You know of him?
Yes.
How do you know of him?
Sorry, sir?
How do you know of him?
Because of all the articles that have been written, but I don't have a relationship.
Yes, no, that's fine. But I just want to know, how do you know of him?
Because of the media articles.
To what effect?
In terms of the allegations relating to his involvement in regiment.
His involvement in regiments.
The allegations relating to regiments and the, I don't know what you want to call them, the alleged relationship that he has with regiments.
You've never met him through regiments.
No, sir.
Ashud Chawla?
No, sir. I may have met Mr. Ashu at the Gupta residence, but that would be limited to that.
Yeah. So you have been...
You know, Mr. Salaga, Mr. Singh, if necessary, can do a supplementary affidavit to say which ones of these people he knows, which ones he doesn't.
Okay.
So maybe you can devote your questioning to more substantive things.
Yes, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, but can I follow up on this question,
Yeah.
Chair, which I just had? Mr. Singh, you said you might or may have met him at the Gupta residence.
Yes.
Is that in Saxonwold?
Yes.
So you have been there
Yes.
a couple of times?
As I've testified to the commission already.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the answer.
I said, as I've testified to the commission already, Mr. Chair.
Well, he asked a few times or a number of
A
times.
couple of times?
A couple of times.
Oh, now you're asking me to remember my response that I gave 3 or 4 weeks ago.
No, he's not asking about the response you
Yes.
gave. He says, you said you may have met him at the Gupta residence. So then he asked, oh, you have been there? I think you said yes.
Yes.
Then he said, a couple of times. And what's your answer to that?
Well, if you're defining a couple as 2,
Yeah,
then no, Mr. Chair, it was definitely more than that.
it was more than that.
Yeah.
Okay. And what estimate would you give
Mr. Chair, I think when we
over the whole period?
traversed this the last time, I think we spoke
6
about,
or 8 or 10? No, I think you said not more than 10.
I think it was between 10 and 12.
Oh, okay. Now I remember. Yeah. No. I'd forgotten that you did actually talk about how many times.
But I wasn't. Was I here? I wasn't here.
Or was it on Transnet?
It was on transit.
Oh, yes, it was on Transnet, yeah. So I'm sorry, Mr. Eslega, we're talking about Transnet when you were not involved in Transnet.
Well, in all fairness, Mr. Chair, you all are also talking about Eskom and Transnet.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah. Okay, all right.
So-
yeah, so he said under the Transnet work stream, he had been to the Gupta residence. Either he said not more than 10 times or maybe around 10, 12 times. Okay.
That's fine. So I won't read the rest of the names, Mr. Singh. If we need to do a supplementary affidavit, we can do so. But I'll be in touch with your legal team. Then your affidavit is on page 482. at the bottom of the page, paragraph 66.
Oh, sorry.
That's the page
Swapping
again.
files when I'm not supposed.
482.
482.
Yes.
The last
The
paragraph.
bottom of the page, paragraph 66. So it's an answer to at paragraph 113.8, return trip to Dubai, 15 December 2015 to 24 December 2015. Mr. Singh says, I confirm that I traveled to return to Dubai on the date set out above. Mr. Singh, then again it would be for private purpose.
That is correct.
And then the next page is, I have no knowledge whether the individuals listed in this paragraph were in Dubai during the period mentioned, since I have not been provided with any proof thereof. Should we read into that, Mr. Singh, that you didn't meet with them in Dubai?
No, sir. I confirm I did not meet with any of these individuals in Dubai.
Sorry, I can't hear.
I did not meet with any of these individuals.
So even in those occasions where Mr. Salim Essa is said to have been in Dubai at the same time, should we read your answer to that, where you say you have no knowledge whether they were present there, to mean that you did not meet with them as well?
That is correct.
Chairperson, I think we've reached the end of it. Paragraph 20. Oh, that was 22.7.
Yeah. Well, wasn't that, were you were still on 22.6?
Yeah, we're getting to
You
22.
still have 22.7.
That's correct. That's Ms. Suleiman's affidavit, Mr. Singh. Sorry to have to jump between the two files. Page 1565.6, paragraph 22.7 reads, a booking was requested for Mr. Singh to fly from Johannesburg to Dubai on 24 February 2017 and back on 27 February 2017. I cannot recall who made this request. Mr. Singh was issued with ticket number 9150537622 CSS 24. We further also booked a ticket for Mr. Rajesh Kumar Gupta, Mr. R. Gupta in brackets, for this flight, together with visas for Mr. Varun Gupta and Mr. Siryakant Singala. The invoice was addressed to Mr. R. Gupta and was charged to account number C000349, which was the account belonging to Sahara Computers, the Gupta-owned entity. The total amount invoiced was 134,560 rand. CSS 25. To the best of my recollection, I received a call from Ashu Chawla, who was our contact person at Sahara Computers, who informed me that a driver would be dropping off the money in cash. This indeed took place, seeing as a driver dropped off 170,000 rand in cash shortly thereafter. The difference would have been for settlement of outstanding fees on their account, CSS 26. This cash was again given to a friend, who in turn made an EFT payment to our Travel Excellence FNB account, CSS 27. For completeness, I'll read. In the past, we had frequently assisted the Guptas with booking flights for themselves or for other parties on the request of either the Guptas or Mr. Essa. Then 22.9, it is common for our clients to pay cash for their bookings. Both Mr. Essa and Mr. Singh frequently sent their drivers to deliver cash for their bookings. Mr. Singh, back to 22.7, do you confirm the trip from Johannesburg to Dubai on 24 February 2017 to 27 February 2017?
I do, sir.
You do? At your request again?
Yes,
With Travel Excellence?
that is correct.
and for private purpose.
That's good.
Your the payment, they say it was made by Sahara Computers. Do you make the payment yourself?
I did, sir.
You did.
Yeah.
Do you know of Sahara Computers making this payment as alleged?
No, sir.
Do you know were you aware that Mr. Rajesh Gupta, together with Mr. Varun Gupta and Mr. Singala, were also booked on the same flight?
Mr. Chair, I don't think she's saying that they were booked on the same flight. I think she's just saying that visas were arranged.
She says for this flight. We further also booked a ticket for Mr. Rajesh Kumar Gupta for this flight, together with visas for Mr. Varun Gupta and Mr. Singala. Yeah, well, maybe we should then just confine ourselves to Mr. Rajesh Gupta.
Mr. Chair, I was not, I do not recall Mr. Gupta being on the flight. I don't recall seeing him.
On that flight.
Yes.
Do you recall how much you paid?
Oh, Mr. Chair, this is going to be an interesting one. Let's go to the document.
Well, I don't think she says you paid, because she says Sahara Computers made the payment. And that was a cash payment dropped off by a driver. But she seems to suggest that the payment for yourself and Mr. Rajesh Gupta for the flights, and then on the other hand for the visas for the two other gentlemen, was a collective payment made by Sahara Computers.
I think that's what she's
She's
saying.
Yes.
So, Mr. Chair, if we go to the documents at 1565.37, which is annexed to SS25.
And just repeat that, Mr. Singh, please.
1565.37.
1565.37.
That is correct.
Okay.
And we will also reference 1565.36.
Yeah, okay, I'm there. What points did you wish to make about?
Mr. Chair, I think, firstly, if we... So, Mr. Chair, I have no recollection of this arrangement in terms of Sahara paying for my trip. There was no such arrangement that I recall. So, as I've stated, I paid for my trip. So, if you look at the the travel excellence invoice, which is at 1565.37, it is made out to Rajesh Kumar Gupta, and it reflects me as a passenger, which correlates to the tax invoice, which is basically from Serendipity on 1565.36. But what is interesting is that if this invoice relates to the Serendipity invoice, we should have the same configuration of the Serendipity invoice as it was the case with my partner when we traveled. And the configuration was that her name was on top, my name was at the bottom. So it was one booking with one ticket. I mean, two tickets, but one booking. Now you find that in this case, Mr. Gupta is not reflected on the Serendipity, which I can only assume that he then made his own arrangement. And there's another invoice, which is obviously not provided by either Serendipity or Travel Excellence. So that's the first point. Then if you look at the SS26, which is on 1565.38.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, on Ms. On Ms. Suleiman's version, he agrees that is Sahara that paid. She received the cash from Mr. Chawla. Yet the receipt is made out to Mr. Singh. So I don't understand. If in anything, Mr. Chair, that should have been made out to either Sahara Computers or in the name of Mr. Rajesh Kumar Gupta.
Thank you. There is a correlation against a person in Transnet,
Yes.
bundle 5, bracket B, page 428, Mr. Singh, paragraph 1, 113.9. Paragraph 1,
Sorry, sir, you actually, wait.
428.
What's the paragraph?
113.9, 1.13.9.
Oh,
The second last paragraph. Return trip to Dubai between 24 February 2017 and 27 February 2017. That's one. And then the second part of it, you shared both flights to and from Dubai with Mr. Rajesh Kumar Gupta on flights EK762 and EK761. You have said you were not aware of him
No, sir.
on that flight. Your response to this is on page 483 of the same Transnet, bundle 5, bracket B.
or 83.
483, paragraph 68, 60, 69, and 70. It's an answer to at paragraph 1.13.9, return trip to Dubai, 24 February 2017 to 27 February 2017. Paragraph 68 reads, the content of this paragraph is denied. I specifically deny the allegation that I traveled, returned to Dubai between 24 February 2017 to 27 February 2017. Okay, Mr. Singh, I'm not appreciating yet your denial, so you will help me understand, because...
So in terms of the content of the...
Let him finish, Mr. Singh.
Sure.
Because the allegation in Ms. Suleiman's affidavit, paragraph 22.7, I thought is to the same effect of your... It's not?
Not technically.
Okay. You can explain the difference, because you admit Ms. Suleiman's allegation.
So if you look, Mr. Chair, at 428, I'm on the right page, no? 428.
428, yes.
Yes.
1.13.9.
Yes. If you look at 428, Mr. Chair, 1.13.9, it says, according to the 10.6 notice, return trip to Dubai between these dates, 24 and 27.
Yes.
So, Mr. Chair, in actual fact, again, as in the case of Hong Kong, I was transiting through Dubai. So the actual flight destination was actually South Africa, Dubai, Delhi. So the 10.6 refers to a return trip to Dubai. It was not a return trip to Dubai, it was a return trip to Delhi.
Yeah.
So that's what we deny.
Yeah. Can you compare this with Ms. Suleiman's paragraph 22.7? Because I know you accept that one, you admit that one. I just need to understand what is the difference between the two. Because she also says a booking was requested for Mr. Singh to fly from Johannesburg to Dubai on 24 February 2017 and back on 27 February 2017. I cannot recall who made this request. Mr. Singh was issued with the ticket. So that part you have said that it is correct. And I thought it's the same as.
Okay, maybe I should have then said it's not technically correct because the serendipity ticket does refer to Delhi. If I can get to, I think it's 1565 point SS 18, I think it is.
You want the ticket SS24?
SS24.
It's on page 1565.36.
Yes. And you'll see there, Mr. Chair, it basically says Joburg, Dubai, Delhi, Joburg, Dubai, Joburg. So maybe I should have also, when you led paragraph 22.7.
So are you saying the omission of Delhi is what you are trying to correct?
Well, let's understand. When you led 22.7, you asked me if I agree that the tickets were issued.
No, that there was a trip on those dates, 24 to 27 February, from Johannesburg to Dubai and back from Dubai to Johannesburg.
Okay, so maybe I should have said technically it was actually to include Delhi as well.
Oh, so it's correct. What is it? It's correct, save that you need to add Delhi to it.
Delhi, which is a lake.
Okay. But is it the same as the 10.6 directive?
The reason why we denied the 10.6 directive was because we thought they were specifically referring to flights that only happen between, it says return trip from Dubai to, between these dates with the return trip. So we actually said, no, it's not a return trip from Dubai only. It also included a leg to Delhi. And we make the point that we actually didn't spend any time in Dubai. It was in transit.
Well, Chair, I suppose insofar as the qualification is made in regard to Ms. Suleiman's affidavit, to add Delhi, accept the rest, but you need to add Delhi, I think nothing further turns on that.
No.
It's just the issue of payment, of course, which is the one lingering issue.
Throughout all of it.
In the sense that she says there was a global payment of 170,000 from Sahara Computers. You say you paid for yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. And then whether you were with Mr. Rajesh Gupta on the flight, you say. What do you say? You are not aware of that, or you deny that?
I did not see him on the flight.
Or you didn't see him? The person that is on the travel. Can you recall how did you pay for this flight, Mr. Singh, for this trip?
Well, Mr. Chair, if you look at the amount, it's around 60,000. I would assume it was in and around that amount.
Raise your voice a bit.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I'm saying if we have reference to the serendipity invoice, it was around 60,000, so I assume it would be in that region.
Okay.
Yes, but how did you pay? Can you recall? Or you driver drop-off, cash, EFT?
I'd be speculating that.
Okay. Now, Mr. Singh, looking at this evidence or affidavit of Ms. Suleiman, that it was Mr. Salim Essa who introduced you to them. You say you can't recall. And
No, I think he didn't say he didn't recall, he denied it.
Denied.
oh, you denied it?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, then that will make me ask you a different question. Chair, I see the time, 5:44.
Yes, well, let me ask this question.
Yes.
Have you noted, Mr. Singh, that in her affidavit about these bookings, Ms. Suleiman sometimes says you made the request for the booking. On other times, she says she can't recall who made the request. You note that?
Yes.
Okay. And sometimes she says you made payment by way of arranging for a driver to drop off cash. You know, you have noted that.
Yes.
And sometimes she says Mr. Essa made payment to settle your account. Maybe it is once, I don't know whether it's more than once, but sometimes she says so. You recall that?
Yes.
She says, I think all the time, these bookings, they linked them to Mr. Salim Essa's account for the reason that she gave, that they regarded him as the guarantor in quotes. Now, you are not suggesting, are you, that where she says Mr. Salim Essa made the payment in regard to your account, your bookings, or trips, that she is deliberately and falsely getting Mr. Essa to be involved in regard to your trips, but you are saying she may be mistaken, or are you saying no, she is just fabricating? Or are you saying no, I'm not saying she's fabricating, I think she's genuinely mistaken?
Mr. Chair, in terms of the overall concluding remarks that I wanted to start with,
yes,
you would see that the discrepancies that I've highlighted throughout all of this indicates that maybe Travel Excellence's accounting records, their books of account and the like, is not exactly 100%. Which may lead one to conclude that it's a fabrication in terms of the documents that we've now seen. Because there is one document that I recall now, Mr. Chair, that I would just like to highlight. Just one point. And then I will move on, Mr. Chair, which is, it may be a small thing, but it's, to me, it's a significant matter. If you look at 1565.37, which is the invoice that relates to Mr. Rajesh Kumar Gupta, which is the last invoice for 134,560. You will notice, Mr. Chair, in the center of the invoice at the bottom, there's a date of 28 November 2018, which is a day before the commissioning of this affidavit. So, again, Mr. Chair, as you said before, we don't know the relevance of this date, but it begs the question, when was this invoice generated? and on
Yeah.
what basis and how. So on one end, Mr. Chair, if I had to give the benefit of the doubt to Ms. Suleiman, I would say this is just very bad accounting and record keeping and admin. And if that is the case, then Mr. Chair, if you look at the theme, it may be that because on her version she allocated me to Mr. S's account, then the receipts that she got, she issued receipts with reference to Mr. Essa. So that could be one version or explanation.
Yeah.
And then on the extreme side, you could then say, given this pervasiveness of this discrepancies, it could be that it's a fabrication. Because, as I said before, Mr. Chair, it is convenient for a bank statement to reflect 170,000, then for you to say, I received 170,000 in cash, and then you have an invoice that has significant discrepancies that add up to 170,000.
Yeah.
And your source documents don't tie up to that.
Yeah.
So that is the summary I would make, Mr. Chair.
Okay, no, that's fine. We need to stop because your counsel needs to go, and we did agree that at 1:45 we'll stop. But I just want to say that it will be let me put it this way. To the extent that you made payments to Travel Excellence, you would have made those payments, if it was EFT or other than cash, you would have made those payments to whatever account number they would have given you. Is that right?
I would think so. Yes.
Yes. And if it was cash, you would have given them cash and they would have deposited themselves to whatever account. Okay. So I think that the legal team and the investigation team need to make arrangements for travel agents, Travel Excellence bank accounts to check whether they were payments from Mr. Singh in regard to any of these, so that if there is proof that payments were made, we can know payments were made from his account. Obviously, those that may have been for cash, that's different, but we must establish which ones, if any, reflect payments that were made through EFT or whatever. Okay.
Yes, Chair.
All right. I think we must stop here.
Yes.
Then maybe on the day when Mr. Singh comes back, to the extent that there's something to wrap up on this, we will wrap up and then move on.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much to everybody. We are going to adjourn for the day. For the benefit of the public, tomorrow I'm hearing the evidence of Mr. Gwede Mantashe testifying on behalf of the ANC in regard to parliamentary oversight and the issue of deployment and other matters. But basically, it will be about parliamentary oversight and deployment, because the President will, towards the end of the month, testify in relation to the ANC as well. We adjourn.